I will pause it, Shri. You can let me know when.
And we have covered a lot of areas of software testing. And overall, everybody should be a little bit aware of what is the kind of role they will be playing when they join the team and what is their day-to-day work. So let me open the PPT that I shared initially. Uh, what all we covered. We gave you introduction, goals, and types of testing, test cycle, manual versus automated testing. We explained you DevOps and different methodology for development, what is analysis and logical thinking, all that we talked. In the second class, we talked about SDLC, SRS, planning and execution, and what all tools you will need, what is high level design and low level design. We explained you functional and non-functional requirements, what is a business rule, and what are the different communication techniques. We talked in detail about when you should raise a red flag and why it is important to keep a record of your work and everything that happens in day-to-day life of a software engineer or a test engineer. The third class was primarily around process and the method. We went through a SRS. We had a SRS walkthrough, and this class was missed by a lot of people. So if anybody wants SRS walkthrough again, I will be happy to do it. And this is the plan for fourth class. Somehow RTM is excluded from third class and fourth class both. So this was excluded, and this is second week, right, Amit? Second week, fourth class.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So we are not into week three. We are into week two, second class. So today we will be discussing in detail about different planning stages and how it is done. So when I'm server. Okay. So this is today, week two, class four. Uh, what is test design? Test design is a bigger umbrella where we define a lot of pieces and we try to think through the whole process of testing. And if we find that there is a risk or there is a challenge that needs to be addressed, then we plan for it ahead of the time. So what is a risk? So, for example, you are creating a user. There is a use case when somebody logs in, and the possibility is that the user is not there in the system. So, the requirement can be like all the users in the system are existing user, or the requirement can be like new users supposed to be registered in the system. So a bank can say like we do not let the users to be created online. We have all our customers registered in the bank. They come to bank, they open the account, we verify all the details, and then we give them the online username and password in their mail address. We send a paper mail or what they call as snail mail. So they send a mail letter and there they supply the username and password that is generated by machine to to be used by user for logging in. So there can be multiple ways to log in. So the risk is like if somebody who is not a user, he will not be able to log in. This looks like a risk to you, but it is a business rule for the customer. So you'll have to list it down. And when you are planning test cases, you'll have to plan in such a way that users should be able to use the system. So now, if you think through this scenario, there is a possibility that some user who has got the username and password written on a paper on a separate mail, his username and password is not working because of some system problem. Maybe maybe somebody didn't mark that as active user, or some system problem has happened. That's why this user is not able to log in. Now, how to handle this problem? This is a risk that this might happen with one user in 10,000. This might happen one in a million. It can happen one in every 10 user. So the risk is you will have to identify what is the possibility that user who's got his username and password, he is not able to log in, and you will have to plan the test cases around it. Okay, so this risk is a part of the test plan and overall test strategy. So the bigger umbrella is test design. Like everything comes under test design. Whatever activity you do, any tool you are using, any strategy you are planning, you are listing down the risk, or you are having discussions, or you are having a flow chart. Anything you do is part of the test design. Now, test design can further be broken down into test strategy, and test strategies can be further broken down into test plan. So strategy can be like, I will be using I will be validating the user login and user module independently, and I will be validating the bank and transaction related stuff separately. So user module can be validated separately, and all other module which are connected to each other can be tested separately. So this is how you break into pieces, and then you plan the testing activities around it. Am I connected, or my voice was dropped out?
No, it's correct.
Uh,
No.
okay. Okay. So that's one example of test strategy and test plan and overall test design. Design is important. So as a layman, if you do not understand what design is, design is a collection of lot of activities that we do to mitigate the risk and think ahead of the problem areas. So if you are designing a building, and there is a possibility that land is not that stable, so anybody can build a building, but a good engineer who understands the land properly and anything related to civil engineering will be able to tell you whether this building will be standing or not. Maybe the building will be standing for 10 years, but there was one earthquake and the building collapses. So if he is a good engineer and he is a good designer, he can plan the building in such a way that even earthquake comes, the building will not collapse. So that's what he does. He use his design principles to to solve a problem. So problem in hand is that land is not that stable. So similarly, in terms of software, it is not tangible. So you'll have to think through scenarios. Probably the land is something which you can touch and feel, and probably you can run some test, soil test or something, that soil is muddy or it has a lot of water in it and it retains a lot of water, so it is not stable. But in terms of software, it is intangible. So you will have to ask the question and imagine a lot of things. Be very creative, like what can go wrong. So if a customer has got username and password in the email, the possibility is that his username and password is probably some water droplet came onto it and it is not readable. So will he ask for another username password? It will take another 10 days to come, or he can talk to some customer care guy who will set up some online mechanism to generate a new username password. So all those scenarios you'll have to think through, and those will be part of the business requirement and business design. And anything you need to test around it is a test case design or test design, right? So when you're planning the test, you have to think about the roles and who will be owning what module, and what will be the roles inside the business also. So like one person is owning login module, another person is owning a transaction module, third person is owning database module or any connectivity with database. That is one level of role. Then there are second roles, like inside business also there can be role can be like a branch manager or a or a or a cashier or any other role in terms of business. So this role is more in terms of what you want to do when you are executing the test cases. So one person will be manager, another person will be QA lead, QA engineers will be there. This role in terms of that, like who when we will be executing the test cases. Then there will be schedules. So like in terms of our website, we plan that we will start this Thursday, and until next Thursday we will complete the test plan activities. What will be the scope? We will break down the test cases in multiple pieces, the whole website into multiple pieces, the way we did last time. And then we will grant you access to the portal TFS, where we went and showed you guys how the scope is defined and how different test cases are broken. So you guys also try to do something similar. Probably, if it is not possible in TFS, you guys can use the same Excel sheet which we shared last time, and write the scope of your module and different test cases inside it. This will be post session exercise. I'm just telling for the sake of taking one example and trying to make it more consumable. Then there are criterias. What are entry and exit criterias? So when we are running the test cases or planning the test situations, so the entry criteria will usually be like the system is up and running, the database is set up, and all the needed roles and requirements are created in the system. So like for example, I can create a VNurt website or workforskill.com. Let me go to the portal. Okay. So when I sign in, I say new user. Now here, if you see, there are different roles, right? Student, professional, corporate, and colleges. These are different roles. One, somebody who's logging and creating user in the site, he can create all these different roles. He can be one of these. So the intention is to the when we try to explain you entry criteria. So as a test engineer, when you get the release site, you will have to mention like if there are these roles in the system, this should be functional. It should not be like I created a student and I say sign up, and the menu and options I am seeing in the website is from professional role, or I created as a professional account, and what I am seeing is like student entries. It is recommending me to be friends with the people who are student, who are not professional like me. So these are the entry criteria of any system, the basic conditions that are needed in order to start the testing. And then the exit criteria are there. So what conditions are satisfied, and at that point you will stop the testing. So exit criteria are usually very simple, like all the test cases should be executed, uh, n percent should be passed. That percent is depends on the system. So it is very complex banking system, or maybe transaction module. For transaction module it can be 99% plus, but if it is like login module, it should be 100% test cases should pass, because we don't want user to be dropping because they were not able to log in. And then there are modules like add beneficiary, or take any other example like uh, say adding IFSC code, or adding another account. So those all can have some tolerance, like 90-95% on the release 1, 100% on release 2. So these are the exit criteria. So your test plan is, once your test plan is completed, how will you exit the whole process? And then there is automation. what all can be automated, what all cannot be automated. You will have to plan for it ahead of the time. And then the deliveries, reports, and matrices. These matrices are to project lot of number for management to consume and decide what is the health of the overall product. There are multiple tasks in between. So a task can be like you need some dummy users because you want to change the username and password of these users. These cannot be real-time users, or you need some test data or test environment. So all this is part of the task which you will be doing. So tasks are very catchy. Listen this carefully. A lot of times you will be asked to complete something, but it is not part of the overall project plan. Means it is not a test case. It is not documented anywhere that you are supposed to do it, but you will have to do it, and it takes some time. So these all day-to-day things are known as tasks which you are supposed to do. It takes time, but they are not documented anywhere. And if they are documented, they are not complete. So, for example, you went ahead and you wanted to test this website, VNurt.com. Now, when you came to Team tab, there is no data in Teams tab. So what happens next? You walk into a developer's desk and you say there is no data in Teams desk. Until I see some data, how will I test it? So the developer will say, like, I'm giving you some script. You run the script, and three teams will start appearing for you. Now, if the developer is taking 2 hours to create those scripts, and you are taking another 1 hour to run the script, and then you are able to see three teams here. The morning you came to office, your work was to click here in the teams, and when these three teams are loading or five teams are loading, your task was to click all three buttons and make sure they are working. But you were sitting for 5 hours just waiting for scripts, and then by the end of the day you were able to see the teams, but you couldn't complete these three buttons as working because you were waiting for developers to complete some task here, right? So you'll have to notify that this amount of time you spent working on some task. It is a data setup task, it is a coordination task, or anything that is required for the project, but it might not be documented or it is not well defined. So it's 9 o'clock. So this is about task. Then comes the testing techniques. I'll come to testing techniques next. Any question until here on a strategy, design, and plan?
No.
No.
Okay. I guess everybody holds good. So the post-session exercise will be like I will be allocating different items from VNurt website to people over here, and then they will have to work on these areas basically. I don't need tasks. I need deliverables. I need to understand what can be automated. I need to understand what will be the entry and exit criteria. So you can take this document, and then your module you'll have to break into these pieces. The way I shared the last document, it has two sections, right? What are the best practices and what are risks? So similarly, you will have to list here what is the possible risk. If you see, I want to see how creative are you with your module. And if you need to understand the module itself, let me know. I'll explain you guys. So that will be your post-session exercise, and it's I don't need it urgently. Take your time, think through. If you want to Google and read more about what is a test plan, how you should do it. This is my version. You can do much better than that. If you want to add something, you want to correct me that I missed something here, you are most welcome to do that. Now, next is testing techniques. What are the testing techniques? So a technique is generally one optimized way of doing something or it's really intelligent mechanism of coming across something. So, for example, the first testing technique is boundary value analysis. So, hope we all would have done this in software, but when we document it and understand it in a systematic process way, then it becomes more consolidated in our brain. That's why these are documented as techniques. So you should follow this if you want to do the best as a tester. So for example, age. If the system says like somebody who's into system, he has to be an adult and he cannot be more than 56 years of age. So your test cases you should define with these three conditions. Anything that is less than 18 is invalid. So your minimum value minus 1 is invalid and minimum is okay. Minimum plus anything is fine until it reaches max. So max is 57, max is 56, max minus 1 is fine, and max plus 1 is not acceptable. So max plus 1 goes invalid, min minus 1 goes invalid, anything in between is a valid one. So we are defining two boundaries, higher boundary and lower boundaries, and then valid and invalid, we are categorizing them. So this is boundary value analysis. Is this clear or need any clarification questions over there? Any other example you guys can think of, any boundary value analysis? No? Okay. So the second technique is EP, equivalence partitioning. So here, if you see the same age example with no min and max, it is simply categorizing into two areas. So the difference is not too much between BVA and EP. In case of age example, both are a bit overlapping. They can be used interchangeably. But if you see mobile number, there is no boundary in mobile number, right? It's totally depends on the number of digits. So number of digit is not something that you can quantify. I mean, say it, you will have to count on the numbers. It is not a figure which you can directly validate. So it can be 000 10 times to 9999 10 times. But the number, if you count, anything less than 10 digits is invalid. Anything greater than 10 digits is again invalid. So you valid and invalid based on some rule. So similarly, there are some other techniques. If you, some of those really vague, I found, but these are still techniques like experience-based techniques. So based on experience, if you have developed any technique, that will be called experience-based technique. Then decision table testing. So for understanding this technique, you'll have to first understand what is decision table. So a decision table is like a chart kind of thing. We break down our decision into multiple pieces and then we decide where to move, what to decide. So similarly, in any testing scenario, you can break down it like what you want to decide. You want to pass the test case or not. So if there are 70% scenarios are passing, then you can say it is passing. If certain cases are failing, then you can say like mostly it is passing, but I need to be more thorough. So you'll have to take a decision on that you will pass it or not. Uh, rest all is like not that much used. Use case testing, as you understand, like particular flow or particular scenario, if you test, it is called use case testing. And any statement, if you want to test or any flow, then it is statement testing. So the next is environment setup and test data setup. So any question on testing techniques?
No, Sri.
No.
Anybody has ever developed their own technique? The most common is like flow testing. So I'll explain with one example that is interchangeably called use case testing. So I say follow this project, and for example, this is asking me to log in or sign up. So this is a particular flow. It should work. If I'm not signed up, it should ask me to sign up. It is working. And then I'm going back to the main menu. It should not happen. This is a break into the primary flow. My primary intention was to join the team or follow the team. It is not happening. So this is a break. And then once I say follow, it should take me to hub and then show me the right message where I want to interact with different users. So this is a particular flow. This is a use case. If it is working, then I'm good. There will be surrounding testing. Now, what is environment setup and test data setup? So like test data setup, I just explained as a task. If you come in the morning and somebody asks you why my testing page is empty, and developer or engineer tells you that this data you'll have to set up on your own, because for example, if you are testing a banking system or any healthcare system, so you say like, I don't see any blood reports in my system. So engineer will tell that there is no data actually in the system. If you want to test it, you will have to create your own data. So the system might not be allowing you to create the data because you are just you are trying to test the system as a consumer, and you don't have permissions to actually create the blood reports in the system, because blood reports are created by the guy who's into pathology, who's not a consumer. So then in that scenario, you will request the developer to create some test data. He will say, I can give you a script, but you'll have to write some imaginary names and some imaginary disease and the test that you'll have to do on your own. So like, I'll show you one example. So when this is our database and we have tables here. So for example, this blog. So when we were starting this system, nobody was actually writing the blocks. But when we wanted to test it, we had to actually create the block data. We inserted some rubbish data in this table and made sure that data is displayed correctly in the UI. So if the data is displayed correctly, then we were sure like anybody is writing blog, and when the data will come, it will display correctly. So at least one part of the system is good. Let me open it again. It was stuck somehow. It came. It's taking some time because probably I'm sharing my screen. I'll stop sharing and start it again. Okay, so this data came, right? Now you see there are many thousand records here, or only 37 records. So these blogs are written by some people who are participant into our website and they have contributed it. But if on day one, when there was nobody on the portal, I want to test whether blogs page is coming nicely or not, or news page is coming nicely or not, then what I'll do? I'll go and write some scripts like insert into blogs meta and blog meta and some values like this. I'll have to write my script and I'll have to save these scripts somewhere, because developer will keep on deleting this database and they will create this database. So that is, for them, it is an environment setup. But for me, it is like I'll have to write all these scripts again and then run them. So once you created or you got these scripts from developer, you'll have to save it. So this is called as test data setup. So for many of the modules you'll have to do this. Environment setup you'll have to do. Test data setup you'll have to do. Environment setup can include installing the tools, installing the softwares that are needed, understanding like what is your login, what are the permissions it has, and then you might be using the system as a different user. Like you logged in as a customer who is seeing his blood reports. You might log in as a pathology guy who's generating those reports, or you might try to log in as a doctor who just want to view the reports, or who has more control over the system, or overall the guy admin guy who is watching everything. So when you are doing all these activities, you will not be able to memorize all these information, like what is the username password for doctor, what is the password for lab guy. So all that information you'll have to record somewhere, and then you'll have to use it again and again. That is called as test data setup, or or the records that you use again and again. Basically, you cannot memorize all this information, and sometimes you'll have to change the environment also for different users. But for a standard website, you don't need to change the environment. Just changing the logging out and logging in is enough. And then there is associated hardware and software setup. So what do you mean by hardware setup? So if there is any specific requirement, so one of my friends was testing one newly launched phone, and this phone had some specific requirement, like the hardware was only allowed in USA. It was not allowed in India because the phone was able to communicate in a different bandwidth, or different frequency, which was not allowed in India. So they had to actually log into US phone from India using internet, and then they used to test it because they cannot bring that phone here. And similarly, if somebody is using testing a DVD drive that is launched by one company, then he need specific hardware, or say a television. A television company also needs testing. So if somebody who, if suppose MI company is Redmi, Xiaomi company is launching a new TV, then they need a test engineer who will be testing that new MI TV with the specific hardware and software. There can be 10 different software that are running on that TV, but the hardware remains same. So this particular permutation combination they'll have to test, and they'll have to set up the different machines for that. So in our service industry and software development context in India, hardware remains mostly very same. It is a standard computer, and the software is again a website. So software are like Chrome or Internet Explorer or Edge. So mostly compatibility testing takes care of it. Customer tells you in advance what most of the user will be using. They will be using Internet Explorer or Chrome, and you set up your software environment accordingly. Sorry. So this concludes the primary section of this today's call. The next one is JMeter. So what I am doing, we had a section where we will be discussing a lot of tools here. So I later realized that it will be a bit difficult for you guys to understand all these tools in a single session. So what I did, in every class, I will be talking about one tool, and you go and do your research, so that by the time we reach this class, you guys will be little bit aware about each and every tool. And when I'm setting up and showing you all these tools, you should be able to consume it much better than in the single class. I'm telling you everything about every tool. So any question until here in today's class? Or any thoughts? No one?
No question.
Okay, thanks, man. So the tool that I wanted to showcase today is JMeter. So JMeter is mostly used by primarily by developer and secondarily by performance lab engineers. And performance lab, I mean the guy who in a testing team do a lot of NFR. So why we use JMeter? So JMeter is a tool where you can scale anything. By scale, I mean if I'm logging in with one user at a time. So my login activity takes 5 seconds or 3 seconds. With JMeter, I can do the same login within fraction of second, and I can scale a million user logging in that half second. It is that powerful. So assume that you are here in this sign in screen. You typed in some username password. You typed in some username password and you click this sign in button. So this sign in button clicking is one activity that will trigger some network traffic, right? So when I click sign in, it clicks some traffic, some communication between server and client, and a lot of activity happens. If you see odd token is there and it is trying to validate whether the user is valid or not. So all this data you can take and you can actually convert in a request. And this request will be triggered by JMeter in probably whatever format or whatever scale you want. If you want it to be triggering 10 times in a second, it will do that. If you want it to trigger the same request a million times in 3 seconds, it will still be able to do it. Depends on the speed of your machine or how much infrastructure you have. So that's the power of JMeter. So let me show you some screen. I was installing it, but it went off my mind and I simply deleted it. So let me show you some sample screens. Anybody used JMeter before this conversation, or this is the first time they heard JMeter?
I know
Probably Madhvi should
JMeter,
have
but
heard about.
yeah, I know JMeter, but I never used JMeter. But I know all this functionality.
Okay. Okay, you know how to set up and all, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, that will be great. So I was looking at JMeter screens. So let us see this screen for example. So here is a scenario. The JMeter, this is a JMeter tool, and this is the primary screen. Here we have created a request, HTTP request, and here are the different graphs that are generated using the result. So it is so powerful. Like you can tell, you can generate the reports like this, how much time it is taking, or it is a particular graph result that is returned by a server. So this is one example. Uh, so before understanding JMeter, you guys should be very well aware about what is REST API. Madhvi, did you get the training on REST API, or before JMeter you have used? Were you aware? I'm just trying to understand like what all I should cover in this topic.
No, REST API, I don't know.
So when you, what was the purpose when you use JMeter? What was the use case?
JMeter, we have to raise uh, main purpose find raise a bug.
Okay, just to raise the bugs.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think my context is little bit different. So you are seeing here, right? This is CSV sample. There is a thread group, and it is seeing a dummy login,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
then it is trying to create a request and a response. So what he is doing here, he's just automating this whole thing, log in and log out, and he is creating the request for this. So after setting up this all thing, he simply clicks a button, and what I'm doing here in this website while logging in and signing out, all this can be avoided. So my UI testing only remains, my functionality testing is done using this tool.
Okay.
So how do they set up all these? If you see here, if you click on this dummy login and all Java request, you will get to see all this data. Are you guys aware of this panel or not? What I am highlighting right now? Anyone? If you guys are not aware, I can explain it, but you'll have to tell me. Like, I cannot guess what is your level of understanding until you tell me. So I'll
JMeter,
go through it. I'll tell each and every. Okay,
see, JMeter we have to
go ahead,
use
Madhvi.
Java. I'm telling about in we have to use JMeter Java application, pure designing. We have to check functionality behavior, right?
Okay.
This is right or
Yeah.
wrong?
So you can use for any application. No, your voice was broken in between. You said we'll have to use for Java application.
Yeah, pure Java application design loaded test. We have to test. No?
Okay, then let me, because we have time today, what I'll do, I'll download JMeter and I'll show you one sample. I was doing some cleanup and I deleted it, but it is not a big tool. It should be downloaded perfectly fine. So I'll tell you, we will start one by one. JMeter, I thought like I'll cover today, but I'll cover how it starts. So read about REST API. Do not read JMeter upfront. This is the name, REST API. Okay. So until do Google of REST API, there will be some what is RESTful API or REST API. Its name is representational state transfer. So what we do, lot of things today are done using the RESTful APIs. This UI is very independent, and this business logic that is written on the server, it is very different. So how do you start when you are testing any website? You go here and you simply say more tools and this developer tools. There will be a shortcut for this on Windows, Control Shift and I on your Chrome browser. It is like Firebug in a Firefox browser or developer console in Chrome. But basically, it gives you a lot of information onto what is happening on the website. So, for example, there is a section about what all are there in this website, different elements. So I can if I click on this thing or say somewhere down, this is my selector, this in the corner. I select one particular element or say any button or anything, it is highlighting different section. For example, I selected this entrepreneurship tag and I'm seeing like hash is there, ID is there, star is there. Like this, you can read the normal HTML inside it. So elements tab gives me a lot of information about different elements in a website. Then there is this console. So this console gives me any information about my bugs or anything that has happened while loading this website. Information is documented here just to monitor when you are doing any operation, some new bug happen. So assume I'm doing like operation, it is asking me to like it or sign in. You see, when I sign in, something new came. So what I did in the log, the developer is logging what is the user ID of the user, what is his user type, what is his first name and last name, and blah 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 blah. So much information they have logged. You can actually copy this information. This is a JSON object. So you should understand JSON. You should understand what is JSON. JSON is JavaScript object notations. So there are tools you can download to format it and read it in Prettify way, or you can go online and do this thing. What I'm doing with JSONlint.com, JSONLINT. This basically decorates the whole JSON object. So I'll not go to there. I'll show you the same object here. So these are the user details, because we are using saving this thing in local storage. So now you see this object, bracket open, user ID, user type, first name, last name, email, first name is verified, is verified or not, last name Pachori, and blah 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 blah. There is so much information in this single object. So you should be able to read this JSON. Number one, you should understand what is the REST API, and then you should be able to use little bit of these tools like JMeter or your basic software management tools like TFS, Jira, and all the nitty-gritty names. So this is my JSON lint. See, when I paste this JSON object, it looks like single line. When I simply say validate JSON, it simply decorates it. It decorates that object so that it is more readable. So this is very standard. A lot of people use JSON. Sorry, I just overheard some.
Only validation purpose we have to use JSON.
Yeah, you can use JSON lint, or you can use if you are using Notepad and those basic editor, there are some extension which you can use for validating all this JSON. It even beautifies this to decorate it. So this is very helpful. Like every mobile app will be using it. Every site is using JSON and REST APIs, and almost 80-90% of the industry people, they are using these standards. They use REST APIs, they use JSON, and you should be able to understand it. Like for example, if I simply missed a double quote, it will tell me it is invalid. So you will get in this format. You should be able to understand what is missing here. A double quote is missing here, and probably a value is missing here. So you will get all this every day, and you should be familiar with all these different techniques. So for example, this null is perfectly fine. If instead of null I give capital, it should still work. So it is saying it is invalid. So it is fine. Some editors, they will understand that capital and small is same. Some editors don't understand. So this is JSON. I'll send in notes what all you should be covering. So we were discussing like these different tabs. We discussed console. In console something was logged, so we took that and tried to understand what is coming. This came from server. So see, if I sign out, and I'll show you where exactly it came. And then I decide like I need to sign in again. So when I sign in, this is my network tab. See carefully, okay? This is my clear button. I have cleared all the traffic. And don't press this red button, it will stop recording. So You guys will not use day to day, but it is helpful if you are trying to find a bug or trying to convince somebody that it is a bug. So you see this, when I click sign in, this auth token was fired. Okay. And this 200 and green light, this is REST API. All these code, if you are able to understand, 200 okay, 500 internal error, 400 bad request, 404 not found. That means it is a if you are able to comprehend what it means, then you will be able to comprehend that bug is there in the system or not, instead of just looking at the UI and testing. Mean depending on developer too much that they tell you whether it is a bug or not. So I'll show you another example. This time I'll type wrong password. Last time it was 200 okay. So this time I'm typing you hotmail.com. Now I'm clearing this traffic. See, this is old traffic. I'm clearing it. And when I click sign in, now incorrect email password, this message came, right? Now let us see auth token. It says 200 okay. Because the request is successful. I got a valid response. Request has not been broken. Now see the response. User ID is -3. That means it is not valid. And everything else is null. So I take that response and I try to parse. Everything is coming as null. Mobile null, password null, everything is null. That means this user simply does not exist in the system. So that's why it is -3. When the user was valid, this came as 213. Means some user ID has come. You can double check with the backend. So when I took this and I write a query, select a star from user where user 213. So once you do this validation, that 213 indeed is the ID of Sridatta at hotmail.com. That means you have covered one cycle. You validated the user is logging in. You validated the ID return is 213 and that is there in database for the same user. Sometime it might be possible if there is a bug in the system, the login will work, but the user ID that it is giving is different than the database. So you should raise a bug that in database it is for different user, but it is showing some different ID in the UI. So you see 213 is here. And his first name, last name, all this data you need to actually verify with the backend. Backend means in database. His mobile number and all the details. Okay. So this was one successful scenario. I was trying to show you some negative scenario. So I say forgot password and I'll deliberately give a wrong email ID and clear this traffic. I say send verification. So this time also response is coming -1. Okay. Once I send verification. Okay. I'll type some imaginary verification code. So in most of the cases, it is coming 200 only. But try to read about REST APIs. This thing you should be able to read, and different tabs you try to understand. What is performance? What is application? So you see here, this is local storage, API, Razorpay. So as a tester, it is not needed for you. It is not a must. But if you understand all these concepts, then you will have upper hand. You will grow better in your career, because a developer will also be surprised that, oh, you know this much also. So These are like tricks of the trade. If you know how to read, you can conclude better whether the bug is very serious or it is superficial or not. I was trying to download JMeter. What I'll do in the next class, last session, I'll show you some real example of JMeter in action. So that should be all for our class today. Amit, probably we are done.
Okay, Shri. Any questions anybody has or anything?
Uh,
Yeah.
Shri, I have one question. REST API, we have to do what in which basis we have to do?
Sorry, for APIs.
REST API. API I know. REST
Okay.
API I don't know. That's why I asked.
Okay, you don't know. So what I will be doing, we have one session for the REST API somewhere.
Hmm.
JMeter Selenium DB concept.
Because this is a backend process.
Yeah. So you see this last class, right? We will be
Yeah.
talking about API and why I went through all these sections today, because like I said, if you are aware of the term and you read little bit about it ahead of my class, then it will help you assimilate better. You will understand a lot. So that's why I showed you this example today. And I'm planning to talk about REST APIs with some examples in the last class.
Yeah. And
So
means we have
let
to find any bug. So in the REST API, we have to use another tool. Yeah, same any tool we have to find.
no, you can use this one only. So have you seen something like this RESTlet? Uh,
Yeah, I know this.
I, I should have shown you guys sometime, right? This tool.
I know this tool.
So for example, we load the list of the cards. So this is the API, and you see this. Some JSON is coming, right? IT
Yeah.
firm spent 5,100 crore on CSR. So this JSON is coming from server. So I need not to go and click. One second, let me expand this. I need not to go and click this menu to confirm whether my news menu is working or not.
Okay.
Actually, I can write hundreds of configurations like this for each and every section. Like this, I can write the bundles and I simply press a button and my testing is done. At least functionally, I'm sure it is working fine. If everything is coming 200 okay, then I'm good. So in JMeter, JMeter is next level of this tool, what you are running in browser. In JMeter, you press a button, it will tell you everything is working as expectation or not. You wash off your hand and go home happily. And if lot of negative is coming, like this 500 is coming or URL is broken, JMeter will tell you a clear image that 50% are failing. Then actually you can pinpoint to the developer that your this menu, this API is not working and you'll have to fix it. A lot of time before they are knowing it, you will be able to tell them if you are having control on APIs.
Okay.
Does this help?
Yeah.
I have URL here. I have some header here. This configuration takes time. So it is a paradox, right? You will either work in early stage or you will work in later stage. So this API thing is like if you understand and set up in the earlier stage of the project, you will save a lot of time and you will have a lot of control over the team and the project in towards your end. I'm telling from architecture's view of point because I was a software architect. So I used to design all these things.
Okay.
I have lot of JMeter bundle. I press one button and I know where it is breaking. I need not to do a regression and whole system testing.
Okay.
Like this particular response came, I can simply go and search in my results it is coming or not. Yeah, it is coming. I can do a random check also. So I just simply say here, the results are matching or not. Anything you want. Because this UI is just nothing but the manifestation of this payload that you are getting in the response here.
Okay.
So I'll talk about it in last class, and if you guys need more handling of it, I'll take another class if it is not completed in that last session. So
Madhvi, for now, what you can do is you can just type REST API on Google. You will get a couple of links. You just try to read that. That is enough for now.
Okay.
No, I'll give them the good resource. I'll send a link where you can read
That will be better actually. So basically, Madhvi wanted to know what she needs to do on REST API, right? So maybe
Yeah.
if she can read a little bit documentation on REST API, that should be enough for now, Madhvi, for you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
she is going to share you a couple of links. You can just go through those. And
Okay.
for others also, it will be good if you guys go through those REST API tutorial so that you understand what does it mean.
And I mean, I have one question. Have you changed VLearn app URL app?
Which URL?
VLearn, because
We
I am yeah, that one.
Which one? Work
Learn app.
work for
That
skill.
what
purpose will get changed because I am open now. It's not open.
No, no. So our main site was workforskills.com. So you try workforskills.com. The VN Learn app that you were using before was
Okay.
basically was the internal name that we have removed now. So you can just simply use workforskills.com.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't have the URL, we will share it.
Yeah, you will share, please.
Yeah. Over to you, she. I'll share the URL to Mark.
Oh, I was talking on mute. I'm good. I just sent the link in the chat.
Okay.
So all set for today's class. We are almost 10 now. If you guys have any questions or queries, feel free to post me. I'll send the REST API link, and we'll set up the stage for JMeter session towards the end of the next class. Okay.
And
Okay.
and Shri, you need to send the exercise that needs to be done.
Yeah, yeah. The exercise with the module name to
Right.
each individual. Okay. Thank you
So
so
guys,
much.
take that exercise seriously because you are going to apply a lot of concepts that you have learned in the last 4 classes. So if you do a justice to this exercise, you will be able to get a lot of information and lot of insights on what you have learned. So basically, it's like what you have learned, you are applying. You're applying those concepts. Okay, and then you will have questions. I'm sure about that. And maybe if you do it, you and once you have questions, you will come back prepared in the next class to ask those questions, and we will try to answer those.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So thank you everyone. Thanks, Amit. Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.
Good night.